Konnichiwa! The Nintendo Switch is a hugely popular games console, and because of this, everyone's clamoring to release games on it. But in today's show, we're going to be taking a look at two indie games that are going to be ported from the Nintendo Switch over to the Sega Genesis and Sega Mega Drive. My name's Mike, and this is the Retro Gamer Boy Show. Yes! Two more games coming out for the Sega Genesis and Mega Drive. They're coming out in 2021 and they're ports from the Nintendo Switch. Now if you love retro gaming as much as I do, if you love the Sega Genesis and Mega Drive, why not consider subscribing? You can do this by clicking on a little button just below this video. So my friends at PSCD Games have sent me alpha code for two games that they're porting that are on the Nintendo Switch. They're also on the PlayStation 4, the Xbox, and I think even the Series X as well. Now over the last couple of years we've seen a number of brand new independent games created for the Sega Genesis and Mega Drive, but what tends to happen is that they're created alongside a Nintendo Switch release. This way the developers can make back their money. But what we haven't really seen are games that are already on a successful platform like the Nintendo Switch and then coming to the Sega Mega Drive. It just shows how popular and how much of a resurgence the Sega Mega Drive and Genesis is currently having. The first game we're going to be taking a look at is Thunder Paw. Now Thunder Paw was originally published by Ratalaika Games, I think I'm pronouncing that correctly, for the Nintendo Switch, and I think on the PlayStation 4 and on the Xbox One. And it was released in 2020. And now over a year later, it's coming to the Sega Mega Drive and Genesis. Now this is an action platform game and stars Thunder. He's a dog whose parents get kidnapped during a huge nuclear explosion, and he's on a mission to go save his parents. Now unlike most action platformer games of its era, this game doesn't go from left to right. Well it does, but it also allows you to go up and down and right to left, because the levels have been designed for you to explore. Levels can only be completed once you kill all the enemies, and so what we have here is a searching function added to the traditional run, jump, attack elements that you usually find in a platformer. Thunder, as well as being able to run and jump, comes equipped with a weapon, and this weapon can be buffed by killing enemies. As you kill an enemy, they'll release a number of gems. Collecting these gems then buffs your weapon, making it stronger and faster. There are a total of 3 guns that you can use, each offering very different attributes that will force you to change your playstyle. The weapon has some serious recoil and pushback on your character when you fire this gun. This is useful and can help you get an extra shot or two in with oncoming enemies, but it can also work against you, pushing you off the edge of platforms or up against walls. Mastering your attack is key to success in this game. Now the game has 20 levels for you to explore and 5 biomes, each biome having an end of level boss. There are hidden lanterns inside every single level and bones that you can collect. And this really is for the completionist within you. If you want to collect all the bones and lanterns within a level, you're going to have to do some serious searching. This also offers an element of replay to the game, where you can go back to previous levels and try complete it 100%. The game has some really well-spaced respawn points, and this is key because you can die quite a lot, especially at the beginning as you're getting used to the controls and that recoil. And there are also some really well-spaced out checkpoints. Now the game does come with unlimited deaths, which makes the standard levels a tad easy, but you really need these unlimited deaths when it comes to the end of level bosses, because this is where we see a jump up in the AI and a difficulty spike. Now I only got to the first boss, but looking on the Nintendo Switch version, it really does look like there's a big spike in difficulty here. I think it's safe to say that a lot of your time is going to be spent replaying some of these end of level bad guys. Now in the alpha build that I've got of the game, there is a continue option in there, so that seems to point to the fact that this could have battery backup saves. Now I've not played the Nintendo Switch version, but looking through some of the playthroughs that are on YouTube and playing the demo that I have in my hands, it feels like this game is probably a genuine port from the original over to the Sega Mega Drive. And that's true of the visual style as well. Whilst of course there's some sacrifices with aspect ratio and colour palette, it still feels very much like the original that you found on the modern consoles. And this is quite an achievement because it has a very modern, stylistic pixel art. Character art, backgrounds, scrolling, they're all there from the original game. And the animation on Thunder is a really nice squash and stretch as you move your character through the environment. Enemies have a more simplistic bounce to them, and there are some environmental animations as well. Where the character art really starts to stand out is when we get to the end of level bosses. Each one of these bosses is very, very different, unlike a lot of the NPCs that you find throughout the game, which are very similar. The game also comes with a still image intro, which is always a nice little extra piece of polish to get on your Sega Genesis and Mega Drive games. Now, whilst gameplay, visuals and animation all seem to be in an advanced state in this demo that I've received, audio definitely isn't. But saying that, the soundtrack is pretty solid, it's not going to irritate you, and it's got some nice rhythm to it. Overall, I'm really impressed with Thunder Paw coming from the Nintendo Switch over to the Sega Mega Drive. It retains a lot of the graphical style elements that you find in the Nintendo Switch, and the gameplay seems to be untouched. It looks to be a solid, fun little platformer with a nice little quirky mechanic where you have to search for all these enemies, kill them before you can complete a level. I really like that there's a completionist element to the game because I am a completionist. Collecting all those bones and lanterns are probably going to keep me coming back to these levels until I get 100%. Thunder Paw is due out for release by the end of 2021 on your Sega Genesis and Mega Drive. Next up is Bone Marrow Rebirth by the same publisher as Thunder Paw, and this is a puzzle RPG game. Bone Marrow. Now, when I first saw this game, I wasn't too overwhelmed by it, but as I started playing it, oh my god, it is super addictive and really well executed. You start the game with 3 characters to choose from. You then go onto a gridded board where you can see your character as a marker. You can move your character left, right, up or down. Every time you move your character, a new marker is added to the board. This marker can either be food, a shield or a sword. Now bear with me because this is where this game gets really interesting. There are 2 phases to the game, daytime and nighttime. During the night phase you can move your character around, left, right, up or down, and every time you move them a new piece appears on the board. That shield, a sword or some food. And as you move around you can combine these pieces. So if there's 2 shields next to each other and you move to the left, the 2 shields will combine and they'll become a stronger shield, upgrading the shield. Now in the day phase is when you can start collecting the things that you've been combining. Now to start with, food heals you, but you've not taken any damage, so it doesn't add much to the game. Shields though add to your shield strength. So combining 8 shields together will make a nice big giant silver shield, and then you'll have 8 points of defense added to your character. Collecting swords does exactly the same thing, but for attack. Build up a sword of 15 and collect it, and you'll have 15 attack points. Now you can collect them individually, so you can get 1 shield and 1 sword, and that will add a single point to your overall defense and attack. But the skill here is managing to move around the board, combining these elements, and then collecting big defense and attack points. Now during the day, you'll also have enemies that will appear on the board. And once an enemy is on the board, you no longer have full control over it. You will take a turn and then the enemy will move the board as well. The enemies can also collect food, defense and attack. If you find yourself next to an enemy and you push into the enemy, that's when you attack them. Your attack point takes away first from their shield, and once their shield is gone, then takes away from their health points. And so what you end up is with this dance where you're moving around each other trying to collect attack, defense and health points, at the same time also trying to push into the other character and attack them. Now every move, combination and collection adds a certain amount of XP to your character as well. And XP allows you to upgrade your character's attributes, or its buffs actually. So you can start buffing your defense, buffing your attack, you can get buffs against poison and other effects on your character. Once the day's over and we go into nighttime again, the board is locked and you can't collect anything. Now if you haven't dispatched any enemies on the board at that time, then the battle continues into the night. By this time, there's no way to collect any attack, defense or health to keep you going through the battle. So it becomes a decision. Do you go in and attack, or do you dance around the field building up your different collectibles ready for daytime, trying to avoid the enemy? Now when you first start the game, you'll just be pushing up, down, left and right randomly. There'll be some sense that you're combining things, but you won't be taking in any kind of strategy, and that's fine. It's actually quite a nice way of learning, and the game has a little tutorial that helps you as you go through this learning phase. But slowly I started to find myself taking more of a chess-like stance, looking at 1 or 2 or 3 different moves ahead so that I could get the advantage over any enemies that were on the screen. This game is very, very, very addictive. I set out just to have a quick play of it to get a lay of the land so I could do this video here. 3 hours in and I was fully addicted to the game. Now there are stages in the game, but I can't tell you what those different stages do because I've not managed to get past the first stage. And I don't know if that's because the first stage is long and hard, or if it's because this is actually just an alpha or beta build of the Mega Drive version of the game. Now as we said earlier, there are 3 characters that you can choose from. From what I can tell, they don't really add anything extra to the gameplay and actually just serve as 3 lives. So once you die, you have to pick another character to play. Kind of like XCOM, I guess. Now visually, the game is simple but very effective. As far as puzzle games go, the pieces on the board are interesting and somewhat dynamic. As you start combining your pieces together, there's a nice visual change to each one of these pieces. As you get stronger weapons, stronger shields and more food, they'll visually upgrade as well. A sword becomes bigger, a shield goes from wood to steel, food goes from an apple to a pear to steak to fish. So there's a nice visual representation of these pieces upgrading. There's also some good squash and stretch animation happening on all the pieces at all the time, keeping the board alive as you play. As you gain XP and level up your character, you'll see your character on the side of the screen leveling up as well. This is a really nice RPG-like effect where you can see the effects of your experience points changing the visual appearance of your character. The day and night cycles are really well described in the visuals as well. When it's dark, the screen goes more dim, the UI gets locked out, and you can see that you can't really interact with those or affect them in any way because you can no longer collect anything. And we get these flames popping up in all 4 corners of the board. During the day, everything lights up again and we no longer have the flames. So a very simple mechanic, but one that describes the different phases well. The overall theme of the game is medieval fantasy, so we get our knights and warriors on one side, and then all our grisly ghouls and demons on the other side. And it really sits nicely in this kind of D&D universe that the developers have created. The audio track is nothing to get super excited about. It's simple, fits with the world, and unlike some Mega Drive puzzle games, isn't annoying and frustrating to hear over and over again. There's some nice, well-designed audio in there as well, with sound effects giving you audio cues for when it's day and night, and also when attacks are happening. Because attacks aren't just close combat, you can have distant attacks as well, so you can be shot by an arrow. And this is where the audio cues come in, as well as some visual cues as well, but the audio cues play a big part in letting you know that you've been attacked. Overall, I'm really impressed with Bone Marrow Rebirth. Out of the 2 games I played, this one really stood out for me, and it's the one that I'm still playing now. Both are very solid games, both very different, action platformer, RPG puzzle, and I do love my RPGs and puzzle games, so maybe that's the bias there, but it is a well-structured game. If you love puzzle games, and more importantly RPG-like puzzle games, then Bone Marrow Rebirth is definitely one to keep an eye on. So there we have it, 2 Nintendo Switch games being brought to the Sega Genesis and Mega Drive this year in 2021. The great thing is, if you like the look of any of these games, you don't have to wait for them to come out on the Mega Drive, although if you're a Mega Drive or Genesis fan, you definitely do want to get these physically on the console. But you can also play them on the Switch, on the PS4 and on the Xbox One, and I think even on some of the next-gen consoles. Now, you guys know how excited I get about any new Sega Mega Drive or Genesis game, regardless of the quality. I love seeing new games coming out for this old console, and any old console in fact. And I think seeing games ported from current gen consoles over to the Genesis and Mega Drive just shows how much of a resurgence this console is having, how popular it is that developers will take the time to port their game over to a console that ended its lifespan 20 years ago. Now remember, if you're new to this channel, if you love your retro gaming, if you love gaming, then why not subscribe? You can do that by clicking on a little button just below this video. We put out brand new retro gaming videos every single Monday, and to ensure that you never miss one, you can also click on a little bell, which is also just below this video. But if you can't wait until Monday, don't worry, because we've got a huge back catalogue of retro gaming videos, 2 of which you can watch over here.